It is a tremendous honor to be here today as we honor a legendary North Dakotan, the 49th recipient of the Theodore Roosevelt Rough Rider Award. The first North Dakotan to fly in space and an inspiration to everyone interested in space exploration, Jim Buchli. My name is Michael Howe, and I have the honor of serving as the Secretary of State for the state of North Dakota. I also have the great honor of offering my concurrence with the selection of new additions to the Theodore Roosevelt Rough Rider Hall of Fame. The other gentleman doing the concurrence is Dr. Bill Peterson of the State Historical Society, and Governor Burgum leads our three-member commission. We've got some statewide officials in the crowd here with us today. Lieutenant Governor Tammy Miller, Tax Commissioner Brian Krauss, State Treasurer Thomas Beadle, Public Service Commissioner Sherry Hogan-Hoffert, and then we've got representatives from our congressional delegation, Tom Odegard of Senator Hoeven's office, Michael Kelsch from Senator Kramer's office, and Mary Christie from Congressman Armstrong's office. And I see a number of Grand Forks area legislators here today. Thank you for your service, and thank you for being part of today's ceremonies. The Theodore Roosevelt Rough Rider Award was established during the 1961 Dakota Territory Centennial to recognize North Dakotans who have been influenced by our great state in achieving national recognition in their fields, and who through their accomplishments have brought pride and honor to North Dakota and our citizens. Throughout his career, Jim has demonstrated the power of values that many North Dakotans hold dear: an incredible work ethic, a love of family and community, and a dedication to constant improvement and success. He's achieved the dreams of many by joining the exclusive ranks of NASA astronauts and participating in 4 space flights, and his work continues to inform our national security and scientific understanding. He shares his experiences and knowledge and has been a friend to the UND Aerospace School and Space Studies program. Jim, thank you for being a role model. We are proud to call you a legendary North Dakotan, and we know that your story will inspire generations to follow in your footsteps. And to all of you, thank you for joining us here today. Thank you for helping us recognize and celebrate Jim for his incredible achievements in aerospace and for his profound impact on North Dakota, and for the honor he has brought to our state. Give yourselves a hand. Your support is what makes this our state's highest honor, such a special recognition for its recipients, and we are grateful to have you have chosen to be here. And what a better setting here today at the UND Aerospace Center in Robin Hall. Joining us today is Robin Hall is home to the John D. Odegard School of Aerospace Sciences. John Odegard himself was named a recipient of the Theodore Roosevelt Rough Rider Award in 2015, and how wonderful it is to celebrate once again the tradition of excellence in the aerospace field. Here to say a few words is Dr. Bob Kraus. Dr. Kraus is the Dean of the John D. Odegard School of Aerospace Sciences. He is a 28-year veteran of the U.S. Air Force, retiring as a colonel, and has more than 3,300 hours and 35 aircraft as an aircraft commander, instructor, and evaluator pilot, experimental test pilot, and hurricane hunter. Dr. Kraus, please come and have a few words.
Thank you, Secretary Howe. Greetings, distinguished visitors, guests, Governor Burgum, Lieutenant Governor Miller, all the other people that he listed. I would like to recognize some of the dignitaries from the university itself. So we have our Vice President of Academic Affairs and Provost Eric Link. We have our Vice President of Marketing and Communications, Melanie Linder. We have our Vice President of Finance and Operations, and any other leadership from UND, thank you. Oh, and our Vice President of Student Affairs, Art Malloy, in the back. So thank you for joining us today. So we also have representation from the complete history of the John D. Odegard School of Aerospace Sciences, starting with Diane Odegard, John's wife. We have Bruce and Ann Smith that followed him, and we have Paul Linseth, and his wife's not here. So, and then my wife, Heather, is joining us also, so welcome to them. In 1968, John Odegard started what became a 4-year program to educate and train pilots for professional careers in aviation. It started with just 2 borrowed airplanes, and within a few years had grown into a college. In the 1980s, programs in atmospheric sciences and another in space studies were added. Throughout the years, John sought out experts to help shape the programs to ensure our graduates were receiving the best education possible. These experts became good friends and continued to support and advise the school as it grew. One of those friends, Jim Buckley, is being recognized today with the Theodore Roosevelt Rough Rider Award. As we were preparing for this, I received a message from one of our former Space Studies Department chairs, Jim Kassler, who is also joining us today. He related a story about Jim participating in a Space Studies Symposium in 2018. Jim came and gave his keynote address appropriately titled, From North Dakota to NASA. But he did much more than that. He signed the Aerospace Network flag that he had taken with him to space and still hangs in our office today. He also spoke with faculty and students, and we heard that he stayed in touch with several of them, truly providing inspiration to the next generation. Jim was and is a great friend of UND Aerospace, and that's why we're here honoring him at this location today. So thank you, Jim, for joining us. And I'll turn it back over to Secretary Howe.
Thank you, Dr. Kraus. Though Jim's adventures have taken him far, far away from North Dakota, he has maintained a close connection to the people and the state who have cheered on his success. Let's hear more about Jim's journey and his impact on our state and the UND Aerospace program.
Hello, and welcome to the University of North Dakota and UND Aerospace. Today, we celebrate astronaut Jim Buckley as he receives the Theodore Roosevelt Rough Rider Award.
7, 6, 5.
Oh, Jim Buckley? He was the first North Dakotan in space. He is a great friend of UND Aerospace. One of the kindest, most humble gentlemen I've ever met. He's been helping UND Aerospace for a long time. I would call him, back in the years when he was with John, a trusted confidant of John's. They've really worked together beautifully and helped UND Aerospace, especially with space studies and the evolving space program. What I remember about the honorary degree that just touched me so much was listening to John present Jim in the ceremony and talk about Jim's background, and then having the honorary degree awarded meant so much to the Odegard School. It brought everything together, and it was such a great honor to be able to give the degree to Jim Buckley, North Dakota astronaut. I do know that he's been in space 4 times. I know he's in the Astronaut Hall of Fame. I know he has conducted numerous scientific experiments on the space shuttle. I know that he's been a leader in the aerospace industry, a leader and executive. I think he's done just about everything aerospace that you could think of. And he's done the best, and he's shared his expertise. Great generosity of spirit for Jim Buckley. I would say fishing is very important to Jim Buckley. Fishing is a passion for Jim, and it really was a passion for John, and I think that was part of the bonding. They came together at Oak Lake and they fished, and they talked about the school and space, and everything evolved. Some magical things happened on the fishing trip. I think one of those moments must have been when John realized he had the wrong tackle box. It wasn't a tackle box at all. It was a box that had picture hanging equipment in it. And he got it out, he opened it up, and of course that was very funny to everybody. And the people on the trip at that time took some of the equipment from the box and put it together with a lure, a special lure, and made some sort of a memento out of it, which they then turned into what they call the Buchli Award, that is given to someone on the fishing trip who demonstrates the vision and the spirit of the Odegard School. Well, I'm thinking of Jim Buchli receiving the Rough Rider Award and how he absolutely rose to the top of the field that he was in. He did his very best. He was determined. He served his country. He served the field he was in to the highest degree. He's a North Dakotan with this work ethic, the family values, and never forgetting where you're from, and the humbleness of spirit. This is Jim Buchli. Thank you, Jim, for all you've done for UND, for this state of North Dakota, and for this nation. Congratulations on this milestone.
As we have heard, Jim and John Odegard were close friends for many years, and both have played significant role in inspiring generations of students. Joining us today is former Dean of the John D. Odegard School of Aerospace Sciences, Dr. Bruce Smith. Bruce was named Dean of the Odegard School and began his duties in January of 2000 and served in that role until 2016. Under his guidance, the Odegard School became a leader in aerospace education, training, and research, and the aviation program at the time of his retirement was the largest in the United States, with 120 aircraft flying more than 116,000 hours annually. Please help me welcome Dr. Bruce Smith.
Good morning. Secretary Howe, thank you for the nice introduction. Governor Burgum, thank you for being here today. We know you've had a pretty hectic schedule over the last couple of months, just to say the least, and it's an honor to have you here with us today. Thank you for being here. Welcome distinguished guests and family members and friends. After listening to Diane in that video, now I know how John Odegard Jr. and Stephanie Odegard felt when John was inducted into the Rough Rider Hall of Fame and they had to follow their mother in speaking. North Dakota is a special place. There's no other place like it in the world. My great-grandparents immigrated to North Dakota in the early 1880s, even before North Dakota was a state. They settled in Grafton and later moved to Leeds. And my grandmother was born in 1885. And I often wonder what it was like to grow up on the prairie, no radio, no TV, and the only means of transportation were the horse and buggy, ox carts, and the railroad. North Dakota is a place where people are resilient, they're honest, they're self-reliant, and they endured hard winters and hot summers without complaint. They were humble, thankful for the talents they were given, and possessed a tremendous work ethic. These are the special traits that were passed down through generations of the people of North Dakota and those held by inductee Jim Buchli. This journey for us began in January. And one morning, Jim called me to ask about the PhD programs for his daughter, Jennifer. And Jennifer is a chief scientist for the ISS and NASA. And of course, Space Studies PhD program here is ideal. I told him I would get in touch with Dean Bob Kraus and with Department Chair Pablo de Leon and set the stage for Jennifer to contact them to get the current status of the degree program. I called him on the phone and both reported back to Jim that both would be excited to hear from her. My wife Ann is here with me today. I wanted to introduce her at this time because of the role she played in the nomination. Since I'd been retired for 8 years and my main source of excitement was the weekly trip to the grocery store, having phone calls from an astronaut, a dean, and a department chair in one morning was about as good as it gets. At that point, Ann knew Jim, but she really didn't know his background nor his accomplishments. So I Googled his bio and we looked at it together. And that's when the light bulb went on and the answer to the question of why isn't Jim in the Theodore Roosevelt Rough Rider Hall of Fame became obvious. I spent the rest of the afternoon writing a nomination letter from Jim's bio and began putting together the network of support. And over the course of the next few weeks, I received letters of support from Dean Kraus, Jim Bunkie, Pablo de Leon, and Larry Martin. Karen Nyberg, who is on our board of directors for the Aerospace Foundation and an astronaut in her own right, provided two of the most invaluable pieces. She holds the insight and knowledge of NASA that I don't. And she edited my cover letter, and her edits were so well written I included them verbatim. She also invited Michael Coates, former director of the Johnson Space Center, to write a letter of recommendation. Both were key pieces of the nomination. I also checked the Rough Rider Awards our website and learned that North Dakota Historical Society was involved in the process. As it turned out, Dale Lennon, UND's former head football coach and a good friend of mine, is the director of the North Dakota Heritage Museum. And in addition, I knew that the North Dakota Attorney General, Drew Wrigley, was a good friend of the Odegard family. So what happened was that I included them, and I didn't know if there was a deadline. So I put a lot of pressure on the people that I asked to write letters. So much so that I told them I was expecting shoulder replacement surgery on the 1st of February, and if they didn't get the reports in, it would be difficult for me because I can't type one-handed. So the nomination package was finished, and I FedExed it to the governor, Governor Burgum, on February 9th. I also sent blind copies to Dale Lennon and Drew Wrigley, asking for their support in any way that would be appropriate or they would feel would be appropriate. Around the 1st of April, Diane sent me a text message asking me if there's anything I should be doing as a follow-up at that time. And I replied, I'd talk to Dale and his boss, Bill Peterson, and who was a part of the selection process. Bill told me that his role was only to do a fact check after the governor's decision, but he was reassuring to say that we were on the governor's radar. It worked. We were successful. Musically is the best way I can describe this nomination. Jim's life and career accomplishments provided the melody. The recommendation letters, along with Karen's edits, were the lyrics. All I had to do was the arrangement and the sound engineering. Now, every song has to have a hook. And that special chorus phrase that grabs the listener, it's a part of every melody and lyrics that you can't get out of your head. And Larry Martin's letter provided the hook when he wrote, "He's an astronaut, for crying out loud." Now, you don't often see that in a letter of recommendation, but for me it was so powerful I thought I could almost just use Larry's letter and it would be enough. All I had to do is figure out where to put it. I thought of putting it first, that it might be too bold, and I thought of putting it last as a clincher might be overlooked. So I put it second. I wanted Michael Coates' letter with his title of director of the Johnson Space Center to be first. The letters from Bob Kraus, Jim Bunkie, and Pablo de Leon followed in perfect harmony. Now, Jim Bunkie's letter was fairly short, and sometimes those can have the most impact. And it took me back to a memory of a letter of recommendation that I wrote for one of our students. And he was the top student that I'd ever seen in this place, just one of those that stood out in every respect. And so when he asked me to do a letter of recommendation, I took my executive letterhead, you know, the small stuff, And I wrote a letter that said something like, I've been the dean here for 12 and a half years, and this is the best student we've ever had. And that was it. Sent it in, and he's right now a captain flying for Delta Airlines. So Jim's was short, but it was very, very direct in terms of Jim Buckley's love of his state of North Dakota and how much the state of North Dakota helped him as a foundation for the basis of his entire career and the success he held. Pablo's letter was very enthusiastic. I think part of the reason that I was so excited on that morning when I talked to the three people that were part of this was that Pablo was so enthusiastic about what Jim had contributed to the Space Studies program and what he contributed to the students and how excited the students were to hear him speak about being in space. So it was really inspiring to be able to be part of the Space Studies program from the perspective of Jim Buckley. So now, Bob Kraus mentioned, of course, Jim's ongoing support of the Odegard School, and it was extensive. One thing that has been barely mentioned is Omega, was a scholarship program that was developed in the early 2000s that Jim served as the national chair. Omega stands for Odegard, means excellence in global aviation. And that endowment now has grown to be almost $1 million in scholarships for students in the Aerospace College at UND. Bob also mentioned the fishing trip, and Diane mentioned the fishing trip. And it was really important because it was a scholarship program that we used. The camp that you saw in the video holds 34 people. So we would fill the camp every year, and we'd overcharge them. Everybody paid their own way, but we'd charge them enough to build a scholarship program out of that trip. The other thing it allowed us to do is it allowed us to invite people that were interested in the school that may not have known a lot about it. And I'll tell you what, when you get paired up with somebody in a boat and you sit there for 4 hours, you kind of run out of things to say, and usually you end up talking about the Odegard School. So it was an absolute excellent way to be able to portray the excellence of this school. So I've also mentioned, Bob's got a picture here. One of the highlights of the trip is the Buckley Award. And this is a picture of John Odegard Jr. and myself when I won the Buckley Award. And I can tell you it's not quite up to the Rough Rider Award, but it's close. Truly an honor. And like Diane said, it exemplifies the spirit of John Odegard and certainly the personality of Jim Buckley. And it only goes to one person a year, and when you get it, you're really proud of it because of the people that it stands for. Diane explained what happened, and the plaque itself, and I don't know if you can see it well enough, it's got the lure attached to it, and it's got the names of the people who have received the award. So, been permanently enshrined at Oak Lake in the Buckley Award. Over the course of the last 135 years since North Dakota became a state, there have only been 48 of its citizens that have been selected for the Rough Rider Award. Today, Jim Buckley is being inducted as the 49th. What a great day, what a great person. Congratulations on being bestowed such a prestigious award. After all, he's an astronaut, for crying out loud. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Bruce. Concurring with the selection of our Theodore Roosevelt Rough Rider Award is one of the joys in my role. And when Governor Burgum asked for my agreement naming Jim our next Rough Rider, it really was a no-brainer. Jim's achievements and professional success, as well as his impact here in North Dakota, will be felt for generations and inspire students to be involved in aviation and pursue space exploration. It truly is an honor to be part of the selection process, and I'm so proud to have Jim join the ranks as a Rough Rider Award recipient. Every day I walk into the Capitol and I walk past 48 legendary North Dakotans, and now I'll walk past Jim's portrait too. And now it is my pleasure to introduce another Rough Rider Award recipient, someone I share an office wall with, North Dakota's 33rd Governor, Governor Doug Burgum.
Good morning. Thank you, Michael, and so great to have you all here. Every Rough Rider Award ceremony is it's a day of gratitude. It's a gratitude for the opportunities that our country presents. It's a day of celebration for the achievements of North Dakotans. But it's also, as I've looked back on all the awardees, it's also a day of family and a day of friends, because it's seldom that someone achieved the heights of accomplishment in a Rough Rider Award process if they aren't surrounded by a great set of people that helped them get there, and there certainly is the case today with the Buchli family. So it's my incredible honor today to be here to share a little bit more about an individual of exemplary character, of incredible and remarkable service to our country, and someone who's literally gone further and gone higher than any other North Dakotan in history, and that's today's award winner, Jim Buchli. I want to thank Secretary Howe. I want to thank State Historical Director Bill Peterson for the concurrence. And I want to start off with gratitude, as I always do, for both of them, but also gratitude for the incredible team here at the University of North Dakota, and how special to start off with the video, and Diane and everybody that's put all this together. I mean, it's special for me personally. When I was a kid, I'll call it a kid, but building a company in North Dakota in the 1980s, I was asked to be the youngest person to join a group of civic leaders from across the state that had a thing going called the Vision 2000. It was about North Dakota was declining in population. We were the only state that had actually lost population between 1930 and the 1980s. And there was a set of stars on that committee working on economic development, how to turn the state around, and one of those was John D. Odegard. And it was my real pleasure to have an opportunity to work with that. And as Michael said, I was walking through the hallway one day, and I was looking at all those portraits, and it turned out that of about the 24 people that served on Vision 2000, there's now 6 of them that are in the Rough Rider Hall of Fame. So it was a great exposure for me and great mentoring for me to be around people like John and others. But of course, this award touches back to someone who wasn't born in North Dakota, but North Dakota really shaped his career, and that's Theodore Roosevelt. And like all of our award winners in the Theodore Roosevelt Award winners, all of them have had to overcome at some point in their life to overcome adversity. And with TR arrived in North Dakota on the shortly days after Valentine's Day of 1884, because on Valentine's Day of 1884, that's the day that both his wife and his mother passed away within hours of each other in the same household. Grief-stricken and torn apart in this unimaginable thing, he came west to the frontier and remade himself from his sickly childhood and his eastern ways into a tough North Dakota cowboy, and he had often proclaimed that he wouldn't have achieved what he did in his life if not for the time that he spent in North Dakota. So it's fitting that we have our highest honor to someone, and today there's some special connections, because Theodore Roosevelt lived this just bold life, and he was always seeking out new frontiers and found joy in that. And as we talk today about the technology and the breakthroughs that Jim went through, it's fun to think back that Theodore Roosevelt was the first president ever in a submarine. He was the first president to appear and be photographed in a car. Apparently McKinley rode in a car before him, but he was the first one to try out that new technology. He was the first president to travel abroad. Didn't go as far as Jim went in his career, but TR made it down to Panama as part of the building of the Panama Canal, and he was the first, and this is a real connection, TR was the first president to fly in a plane. I've had an opportunity to visit TR's final resting place near his home in Oyster Bay in this simple little local cemetery. But the only quote that's anywhere near his gravesite says, "Keep your eyes on the stars and your feet on the ground." And here we have an award winner that only listened to half of that, because he certainly kept his eyes on the stars, but he most certainly did not keep his feet on the ground. And he's been his own legendary, had his own joy in pursuing new frontiers, but his frontiers were all in air and space. Through mission after mission of space exploration, our nation has been captivated by space. And many of us can remember the first time that we saw a missile launch. I'm sure those that are the older generation know exactly. We knew exactly where we were when Neil Armstrong stepped down those stairs and said, "This is a small step for man, a giant leap for mankind." And of course, we had a little bit of a lull. You know, we went through the Mercury, the Gemini, the Apollo, and all the interesting times there. But then there was a lull, and then the whole era of the space shuttle, which brought new interest. And I think if you, during that era of that time, if you talk to any youngster, I'm sure you've got kids or grandkids that at one time or another got exposed to America's leadership in space and said that young child said, "Hey, when I grow up, I want to be an astronaut." I'm sure you've all experienced that. But hey, there was somebody that said that and then achieved that dream, navigating one of the most elite and exclusive selection processes that we have in our country, more elite than anything you could imagine, to become an astronaut, and then going on to becoming the first North Dakotan to fly in space. And Jim's life and career have touched every corner of North Dakota, inspiring generations to people to look to space for their career, and knowing that proving to all of us that there's no limit to what a North Dakotan can do. I always say that Jim had the best of both worlds because he was a Class B kid like me, and everybody here from North Dakota? Anybody here not from North Dakota? A couple. Anyway, well, there's only two classes of sports in North Dakota: Class B for all the little towns, Class A for the big towns like Grand Forks and Fargo and others. But Jim, hailing from New Rockford, gets to claim himself as a Class B kid. But then he graduated from, at the time, which was probably the largest school in the state, Fargo Central. And are there any other classmates here from high school classmates from Fargo Central? Raise your hands. Okay, we got like half the football team here from 63 of Fargo Central. So we're going to do a little fact checking. Was it true that Jim Buchli played linebacker? Yes. Okay, was it true that he weighed 135 pounds when he was playing linebacker? Heads are nodding up here. Okay, we've got that fact checked. There should be another Hall of Fame for 135-pound linebackers, but I think it shows you a little bit of his determination. But of course, there was some foreshadowing here. As a Class B kid myself, I love following team names. The only sports team in Class B that we have across the whole state with the name of Rockets is New Rockford. So I think there was maybe a seed planted there. Now they've merged with Cheyenne, for those that are closely following. Now it's the New Rockford Cheyenne Rockets. But Jim's incredible career of service to our nation began long before he joined the elite ranks of space exploration. And I think his prior military career, which we'll touch on, showed that he was always among the best in our nation that had to offer. But of course, it takes serious brains and serious capability, physical, emotional, social, communication, intelligence, to make it through the incredibly strict and challenging astronaut program. But he showed some of that right out of high school, coming out of Fargo Central, getting nominated and accepted into the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. After graduating in 1967, he accepted a commission as a second lieutenant of the U.S. Marine Corps. This is where I pause for people that want to yell out. The Marine Corps? The Marine Corps? Okay, all right, there's a few of them in here. And then there's and then some of them are undercover that are here too, so that's why they weren't yelling. Anyway, but he was assigned to a one-year tour of duty to serve our country in Vietnam, served as a platoon commander, climbed the ranks, became an executive officer, company commander for Company B, Reconnaissance Battalion, returned after that to the U.S., went to the Naval Air Station, Pensacola, Florida, to start his naval flight training and earn his wings. And of course, that's where he met his beautiful wife, Jean, and they've been married for 54 years. Congratulations. Throughout his 25 years of military service, after serving in Vietnam and in Pensacola, he also served at Kaneohe. Try one more time. Kaneohe, Hawaii. And then the next one you're going to help me with, Iwakuni?
Close. Iwakuni.
Iwakuni. Okay, Iwakuni, Japan. And then to Beaufort, South Carolina. Am I saying that right? Okay. The next one I'm going to need help on, Naval Air Station at Patuxent River. Okay, the only thing I can conclude from all of this is that Jim had so much clout that he said, I only want to be stationed in places that have way more vowels than they have consonants. That's the only thing. Who would have served in these 4 places? I mean, that is like unpronounceable. They could have used like a Kent Herbeck in there or something who had like no vowels in his name. But anyway, twins joke, sorry. Anyway, through all of this and serving all around the world, Jim amassed over 4,200 hours of flight time, 17 different aircraft, including flying combat missions in the F-4 Phantom. And it's quite a resume to have served all that, decorated time frame there, but we haven't even got to the astronaut part yet. And of course, along the way, they had 2 beautiful children, Jimmy and Jennifer. I know Jimmy's here today. Where's Jimmy? Right there, okay, sir. And then Jennifer, who was mentioned, she's chief scientist at the space station. Jimmy's had a decorated career in law enforcement, going after your twin brother, I guess, who served here in the North Dakota Highway Patrol for 23 years. Where's the twin brother? Right there, okay. There's a running joke where Jim says, I have a twin brother, we're identical, and then they stand up and his brother's a foot taller. So that's the... But anyway, on behalf of North Dakota Highway Patrol, thank you for your service too, and thank you for your law enforcement. What an incredible family. I know there's lots more family here. Jim's going to get a chance to introduce some of them, but before I go any further in that, I want to express a deep word of gratitude to Colonel Buchli, because this is like a long career in the military before he even got into the astronaut program. And we know that we wouldn't have our freedoms that we have, that we cherish, that are the foundation of our country, without all of those that serve our country. And so if there's anybody here today who's a veteran, anybody here who is still serving actively in the military, as the Commander-in-Chief of the North Dakota National Guard, it's one of my greatest honors to lead that incredible group, including the North Dakota National Guard and the North Dakota Air Guard, the famous Happy Hooligans. But if there's anybody here today that's a veteran or is currently serving, if you could please stand along with Jim, and let's say thanks to all of you. On January 16th of 1978, NASA announced Astronaut Group 8. It was a selection of 35 astronauts. There was thousands and thousands and thousands of aspirants and applicants trying to get into that group. Among those, there was 15 pilots and 20 mission specialists, and one of those was our very own Jim Buchli. Congratulations, Jim. During his career as a NASA astronaut, Jim served on a total of 4 space shuttle flights, participating in missions of great scientific and national security importance. And we set aside a special seat for Jim. I hope they got a number on that one, but seat number 4. Because on all of these missions, whether there's a 5-man crew or 8-person crew, seat 4 is central to the seating arrangements. It's the position for someone who's part of the flight deck, was working to maintain the spacecraft and equipment, conducting experiments and launching satellites. And that special seat is the one that Jim held on every one of his 4 successful missions. 7 years after becoming part of NASA on that Group 8, On January 24th, 1985, at the Kennedy Space Center, Jim had his first outer space mission. STS-51C was the first of its kind. It was the first one that was dedicated to a Department of Defense mission. So Jim's military background certainly came into play there. It was the 15th mission of the Space Shuttle program and the third flight of Space Shuttle Discovery. The mission traveled 1.25 million miles. And for anyone doing the math, and I'm sure here at UND there's a few of those, that's 50 times around the Earth. And that was only the 100th human space flight in the history to achieve orbit. And as a Department of Defense mission, most of the details of STS-51C remain classified. But we're hoping in the spirit of transparency that Jim, during his remarks, will share everything that they actually they did on that mission. But if you can't, can you say anything? No, he says he can't. Okay, all right. Did you do some really cool stuff? Just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Nod slightly.
You would have been very proud.
He said we would have been very proud. So anyway, way to go. Thank you, Jim. Jim's second mission was a record breaker. October 30th, 1985, also known as Space Lab D1, launched the largest crew into space ever, 8 people. This was a 3 million mile journey. It was funded and directed by West Germany, giving it the name Space Lab D1 or Deutschland 1. That mission included 76 different scientific experiments, and that mission was the 9th and last successful flight of Space Shuttle Challenger before its heartbreaking disaster. This reminds us that for all the glory of space, it contains danger, and people don't become astronauts unless they're willing, as they are in the military, to make the ultimate sacrifice in that pursuit of knowledge. And of course, we're happy that Jim made it through that one. And after another successful mission, Jim was again asked to serve on the 28th Space Shuttle mission. And this was, of course, as many of them, there was flight delays, faulty liquid turbopumps, delayed when master event controller broke, faulty pre-burner oxidizer value on the day of the planned takeoff, excessive winds and fog pushed back the launch again. These are the things that we forget about, and the anxiety and the challenges there must be as people solve these problems and keep moving forward. But after multiple delays, on March 13th, 1989, Mission 3 began for the 8th flight of Space Shuttle Discovery. Multiple experiments, and one that we all perhaps got to enjoy because they included an IMAX 70mm camera to film the scenes for the film Blue Planet, which many of us have seen, which came out in 1990. They had challenges along that trip and things that could have gone wrong, but thankfully no drastic issues occurred. They did have to land one orbit earlier due to high winds. On the 4th and final mission for Jim, he served again as a mission specialist in that seat number 4 aboard Space Shuttle Discovery. Primary payload was to deliver upper atmosphere research satellite. Successfully deployed 400 miles above the surface with the goal of studying humanity's effect on the atmosphere. It was the first major element of Mission to Planet Earth, a multi-year global research that used the ground, airborne, and space instruments to study Earth's complete environment. That mission, this 4th mission, 81 revolutions around the Earth, traveling over, again, almost 2.2 million miles. The first flight test an electronic camera in space, and lots of achievements achieved there. So having served as an astronaut for 14 years, from 78 to 92, made countless accomplishments. And if you add them all up, 20 days, 10 hours, 25 minutes, and 32 seconds in space, orbiting the Earth 319 times. I don't know how that works on the frequent flyer thing. When you get on Delta, do they give you upgrades all the time for that? They should. I mean, like some people are just spend their whole life getting to 1 million miles. Anyway, that is incredible. But his career at NASA didn't end. He was done with his service flying, but Jim served as the deputy chief of the astronaut office. The most senior leadership for active astronauts, played a key role in training and operations, continuing to support the United States mission in space. And one thing I did maybe read too in the prep was, did you also help design a new spacesuit? Was that one of the things you worked on? Is this one of those? Okay, he said no, he didn't design this one. His was much.
UND's version.
This is UND's version? Okay, all right. Well, Jim's was nicer. Okay, all right. It's very special. But this is an incredible career. We're grateful that he's done everything to share his experiences. It's been mentioned that he's come back here and helped inspire generations of kids. And with his support, generations of students at UND Aerospace will have the tools and inspiration and understanding of our universe and maybe aspire to do this. At this point, related to this, I have a special opportunity. They weren't able to be here today, but someone who I'm sure you know well is Bill Nelson, who's the current administrator of NASA, and he wrote this letter to me and asked me to read it today. Dear Governor Burgum, one of the high privileges NASA shares with the great people of North Dakota is this. We both get to call Colonel James Buckley one of our own. It's a pleasure to send my congratulations as you recognize the character and accomplishments of this exemplary man, an astronaut whose spirit of service sprung from roots set deep in the plains of the Rough Rider State. It's impossible for a person to orbit the Earth 319 times, as Jim did during his 4 space shuttle missions, and not come down a changed person. Yet part of the gift Jim provides to humanity is through what he did when he returned to Earth for good. That's through his decades of commitment to this place where you've gathered today, the University of North Dakota. Here, Jim, the first astronaut from North Dakota, has shared with UND Aerospace students the treasured lessons that space has shared with him. These students, these members of the Artemis generation, are the future of this planet. They hail from the generation that will one day set foot on Mars. What a joy to know that they are benefiting from Jim's teaching. This is part of the great adventure that Jim has lived and the great service that Jim has paid forward. For exploring the unknown is an act of hope. Serving your country through daring and discovery is an act of hope. Passing on those gifts to generations to come is an act of hope. These are the traits of North Dakota. These are the traits of Theodore Roosevelt. And these are the traits of one of NASA's finest, Colonel James Buckley, whom we have always been proud to call a star sailor and who now we are honored to call a Rough Rider. Sincerely, Bill Nelson, NASA Administrator. And he's a friend of yours, right? Because I heard he likes to have friends in high places, and that's why he really likes you. Like I said, gone higher than any North Dakotan, so special. But here we're at the spot that we've all been waiting for, and Jim has received many awards and recognition throughout his life. I'm just going to name a few of them. So he's very familiar with award ceremonies. Defense Superior Service Medal, the Legion of Merit, the Purple Heart. Defense Meritorious Service Medal, Navy and Marine Corps Accommodation Medal, Vietnam Gallantry Cross with Silver Star, and of course, as mentioned earlier, the United States Hall of Fame in 2019. So this is not his first award ceremony. Bill and Mike, if you could join me here or get ready to come on up here, that would be great. Take your position over there for the unveiling. And I'll give you the cue. We got a little more to read. Okay. For your service to country and your dedication to professional, scientific, defense-related, and record-breaking missions, you have proven that the American dream is open and available to those who chase it. You've inspired North Dakotans, Americans, and countless others in the world to quite literally reach for the stars. And now it is my great honor, and with the concurrence of the Secretary of State and the Director of State Historical Society, to add one more North Dakota's highest honor. We present you, Jim Buckley, the North Dakota Rough Rider Award. Jim, if you could join us. Right over here by the top. Thank you. Bill, you want to go to the other side? And if you guys can just hold there for 1 second. The official, we also have a, can you hand me that so I don't knock over our friend here? I'd like to give you that as well. The official description of the award reads, an honorary rank of colonel in the North Dakota Rough Rider, in the North Dakota Theodore Roosevelt Rough Riders was established during the 1961 territorial centennial as North Dakota's highest civilian honor. The award recognizing North Dakotans who have been influenced by the state in achieving national recognition in their fields of endeavor, thereby reflecting credit and honor upon North Dakota and its citizens. Portraits of the recipient will hang in the North Dakota Roosevelt Rough Rider Hall of Fame in the North Dakota Capitol Building. Tomorrow, Jim's portrait will join the ranks of legendary North Dakotans. And for those that might also know, there's actually a second portrait that is made that goes to the award winner. So Jim and Jean, you'll have to figure out where you're going to hang this at home. Maybe next to the Buchli Fishing Award or something. Okay. But at this point in time, we want to say congratulations. Congratulations to Jim. I want to give a special nod also to Jean, because we know when one person serves in the military and in Nassau, the whole family is serving. So to you and your kids and the entire Buchli family, congratulations. And at this point, this is what we've all been waiting for. We get an opportunity to hear a few words. Jimmy, want to hear a few words from Jim? Yeah, okay, here we go.
Wow, this is a big deal. Certainly for me. And Governor, I hope you guys didn't make a mistake on the selection, because I'm not giving the award back. What you said about family is very, very true. And I'd like to introduce my family here before I get started on a few remarks. My son Jim is here with his wife Denise. Like you said, both Denise and Jim are retired lieutenants in the Decatur Police Department, and Jim is still serving with the Sheriff's Department in North Alabama. My daughter Jennifer, who as you said, is the chief scientist for Space Station, is in Boston today, so she couldn't come down here. But hopefully she's doing what she always does, and that's sell space and do it well. And the leader of our family is here, Miss Jean. Jean Buchli and I have been married 6 days ago, 54 years. We met on a blind date, and at the end of that date, I told her, I didn't tell her, but I knew that's who I was going to get married to. And through all of it, the good, the bad, and everything in between, she's been my rock, and she's my confidant, and she and I have made all the decisions that we've had so far together. Thanks, honey. Appreciate it. My brother and sister and their families are here today. Where's Jerry? My brother Jerry, as you said, is a highway patrolman. My sister taught school for many, many years. And so we have a family that service is kind of our background. We find that serving other people is something that we certainly have in our DNA, I guess I would say. It's already been said, and I'm going to say it again, that North Dakota is a unique place. All of us who have come from there have benefited greatly. Our teachers, adult leaders, coaches, and all of the friends that we have that we grew up with were inspirational and extremely good role models. You don't see that very often these days, but we were blessed to grow up in a time and in a state where I think that was actually commonplace. A lot of people that graduated from Fargo High School in '63 went on to do some really, really great things in their own careers. And in fact, can all the 63ers stand up? Can you still stand up? Thank you. You said it also, Governor, that, and I think Teddy Roosevelt did say it right, and he said, if it were not for the time I spent in North Dakota, I would never have been president. And I think that's probably true for a lot of us. If it wasn't for the time that we spent in North Dakota, we would not have done some of the things that we've been able to do in our careers and our life. Having grown up with a really good school system and with peers that valued education, it gave me an opportunity to go to the Naval Academy. Being from North Dakota and a long way from the sea, I really didn't know what I was getting into. The first day we got there, and John's a classmate of mine from Annapolis, first day we got there, you see this large dormitory. 4,000 midshipmen live in one dormitory there. It's the largest one in the world. It's a little intimidating, to say the least. The next thing that's intimidating is you get your little white uniform, Dixie cup cap, and all your hair shaved off. And from then on, they rebuild you with the leadership that is part of our naval service. They teach you to value professionalism, you get a quality education, and you get a love for your country, and all of us that graduate have that deeply embedded in us. John and I both joined into the Marine Corps. It was an option that you had back in '67. We both wanted to serve as infantry officers before we went into aviation. I had a degree in aeronautical engineering. Digging foxholes in Vietnam, I didn't use it very much. But after I had done that and led Marines in combat, I knew that I wanted to stay in the Marines as long as I could. Went back into flight training. That's where I met Gene. The Marine Corps gave us opportunity to see what we could do as individuals and as a team. Everything you do in the Marines is with a team, working together, side by side with other Marines, particularly in combat, where you're there for yourself and for your fellow combatant. The opportunities that they gave me was the opportunity to go to advanced degree program, test pilot school, and then to be able to be a viable candidate to go into the astronaut program. So, how did I get into that? I can remember us in Pax River. Test pilot school was just about over. The announcement came out that we're looking for candidates to come to the space program. And I can remember the night Gene and I were laying in bed talking about that, and she said to me, well, if you really want to do that, go ahead and put your name in. So I did. And the first time I did that, the Marine Corps sent my resume back and saying, you know, you really don't have a lot of test flight experience yet, so we're not going to submit it. And I wrote them back and said, well, it's what I've got, and I fluffed it up a little bit more, and it went in. And in November of that year, I had a full week of, I won't call it induction, but it was a pretty good set of tests for, physically, are you ready to go do this? Mentally, are you ready to do this? We had two psychiatrists that we worked with. That was kind of a treat. And the biggest thing we had was a interview with all of the seasoned astronauts and the leadership of NASA, where you walked in and there's this big U-shaped table and all of them sitting there, and you spent about an hour in a dialogue with them. And that was really whatever the tiebreaker is for people to get selected. That really was it. I told them a story about one of my recon teams in Vietnam. We were out by Khe Sanh, weather was lousy. We got into a harbor site. We also, unfortunately, inadvertently got into a regimental NVA camp that was coming through on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And so we sat in our harbor site, deciding whether the 6 of us were going to take on the regiment or whether we're just going to be quiet and report what we see and go back. We elected to stay tight and report what we were going to see and go back. But that night, the corporal sitting next to me woke me up and he said, "Lieutenant," I said, "What?" He says, "I've got a snake wrapped around my leg." I said, "Well, how big is it?" He said, "It goes from my ankle to my thigh." The first thing I thought is that, my God, I'm glad it's not me with that snake around. But I told him, I said, "Okay," I said, "he's just cold, and in the morning he'll go away after he's had the heat of your body all night." Corporal says, "Okay," and in the morning that snake was gone. But I told that to the selection committee, and one of the doctors that was on the committee afterwards, he said, "You know, that was the best story I've heard in all the selection processes we've had about somebody with a snake in combat." NASA really allowed us to become team players. As you might imagine, working together for a year for a flight with a crew, you become one. You become very close. You understand everybody's strengths, everybody's weaknesses, but also there's a very large team on the ground that does exactly the same thing. And for a year, you get ready for a flight. It's hard work. It's hard on the families. There's travel involved. And there's risk involved. And that's probably the hardest thing on the families, is knowing what that risk is. But when I talk to children and students, young adults, you know, I talk about those things that are important as they have been in growing up in North Dakota. Those attributes of hard work, tenacity, goals. Those are things that make the difference in whether you're going to be successful or whether you're not. And so I'm very proud to have been in a place where that is part of our culture. And I hope that culture is going to stay with us for years to come. I've talked to a lot of young people in universities. I've talked to a lot of kids in classrooms. And I really think that our country's in good shape with many of those kids. They're a lot smarter than we've ever were. Most of them are very focused. Most of them really want to do the very best they can. And I think if we push forward in our space program and in other programs, I think that there's going to be good years to come for our country. With that, I have one more thing I'd like to do. Governor, could you come back up here for a minute, please? I have a North Dakota flag. This flag flew with me in 1985 on our first mission. I've kept it for 39 years, and I'd like you to have that for wherever you want to put it, in our state, in your house, in your garage, wherever you'd like to take it.
Let's you and I hold that up. And, I've got the Secretary of State here and the Historical Society. The Secretary of State knows that the governor can't accept gifts. And Bill Peterson's already got his eye on this, so there's going to be a place for this in the North Dakota Historical Society, but I'm happy to accept this on behalf of the state of North Dakota. And anticipating your generosity, we didn't want to have you left without one. This one is, how many trips around the Earth does
This
go?
was the first flight, so that was, I don't know, a million or so miles.
Okay, so we have a 1,000,000-mile historic flag, and then we have a flag that flew over the Capitol yesterday. Very special, very rare, never before seen, but on behalf of all of us, we'd like to have you keep that for your collection.